All right, good evening, Portland. Welcome to the Portland Psychedelic Society's presentation on Psychedelics and Birth. We're really excited to have you all here. It's really exciting to see everybody talking to each other. The Portland Psychedelic Society is a Find the Others group, and we are here for you. We are here as a group of volunteers that are facilitating community and conversation around these transformational and healing medicines. Now, the healing potential of psychedelic medicines is also fraught with the fact that we are still talking about Schedule I substances. So we will help you find the others, but we will not help you find the substances. You're on your own on that. Please don't ask your neighbors. Be discreet, and the elves will find you. Tell us what you do want to hear and what does speak to you. We're here to be providing the information that the Portland and Cascadia community want to see. So speaking of the Cascadia community, tonight we're really excited to have a speaker coming down from Seattle. Dr. April Bolding, PT, CCD, is the co-author of Pregnancy, Childbirth, and the Newborn. She is a women's health physical therapist in Seattle. She holds a doctorate in physical therapy, is a Maya abdominal therapy practitioner, childbirth educator, birth doula, author, and speaker. She's the creator of the Phoenix Heart Arise Healing Program, a holistic healing kit that helps people prepare for and heal from childbirth, heal from pelvic pain, surgery, trauma, and ultimately restore their more optimal pelvic floor function. She is also a visionary that is finding a holistic path from all aspects of the birth journeys and is here to talk about what we can learn about birth from psychedelics and what we can learn about psychedelics from birth. Let's have a warm round of applause for Dr. April Bolding.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys welcoming me here. Thank you, Portland, for showing up on a sunny day. That's hard to do sometimes. And, you know, seeing on the marquee outside, conscious creation of the future, and psychedelics and birth. It's just such an exciting thing to have that so public and to share this information with you that really just came to me through the birth work that I do, and I'll explain to you more as I show you some slides. But this is the first time I'm talking in public about this, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say, your feedback, and I hope you find this interesting. So we don't have a clicker that I can advance the slides, so I have to say next slide every time. So I'm going to say next slide. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I just want to acknowledge, thank you to Charles for inviting me here. We've met at a few psychedelic conferences, including Imagine Convergence, which is excellent conference if you ever want to go to that. It's not just on psychedelics, but envisioning the future is what it's about.
April?
Yeah.
Am I closer to you?
Closer.
There you go.
Okay, sounds good. Just want to acknowledge Tom and Sherry Eckhart here, trying to work hard to legalize psilocybin, and appreciate that. Saw them at the Oregon Country Fair last year talking about this. So I know I'm on your guys' turf, so right on. Appreciate what you're doing. Also, my sisters, Angela Ward, Kelly Dungan, they're labor and delivery nurses, and we've done some visioning on birth as well. And some of what I have come up with definitely was dreamt up by them too. So, and a shout out to Denver for decriminalization. Very exciting. Going in the right direction. All right, next slide. Let's see. So this is me, just briefly. I'm co-author of Pregnancy, Childbirth, and the Newborn with Penny Simpkin. Some of you who know about birth know about Penny Simpkin. We're 5 authors in Seattle. I've been a childbirth educator for 18 years as well as a birth doula. So I attend births and help people move through that transformational experience. Lots of rich wisdom and knowledge comes from that, and I've learned a lot about helping with altered states and navigating altered states, being a birth doula, And I want to share that with you and connect some dots. What else? So, I'm not sure exactly where to stand here. Maybe I'll stand over here. My access through psychedelics is not being a psychonaut, and I really was in college a long time to get my doctorate. I'm a women's health physical therapist, orthopedic physical therapist, and really did not do a whole lot of exploration with psychedelics when I was younger. When I started hearing about psychedelics for healing, and also that I had somebody in my childbirth class preparing for birth, and they knew all about ayahuasca, and I did not know what they were talking about, and so they were kind enough to take me out to dinner and explain what they were talking about. And it just got me thinking, and it took me years to catch up to what they were talking about. But because of these studies that we have, the history of psychedelics, and knowing that it can help with healing of trauma and treatment-resistant depression, man, I'm in. I work with women, pelvic floor, abdominals, and there's a lot of trauma that women go through in these areas, and the body remembers. So a lot of my work is helping women and survivors undo a lot of, or reap the gold and the benefits from what has happened in their life experiences. So, having psychedelics get us out of that default mode network and into lighting up our brain and to understanding things in a more expanded way appeals to me very much, because I want the best for women, my clients, but everybody. So that is my access point. It's been 2.5 years since I've been going to conferences now to learn more and reading books, etc. So I'm glad I'm talking to you guys now. Not that I'm an expert, but I'm going to bring my expertise in birth to tell you how birth, childbirth, and these rebirth or psychedelic journeys can inform each other. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're going to cover 3 things. The first thing is the way we birth and rebirth matter. So, when I say birth, I mean childbirth, and when I say rebirth, I mean having a transformational experience with a psychedelic. Okay? We know that mystical experiences can be induced by certain doses of psychedelics. So, the way we do it matters, and I'll go into why it matters and how we can set that up for everybody's highest good. Secondly, birth and psychedelic journeys are revelatory experiences that can lead to awakening and increased awareness of consciousness. Okay? So these are big experiences. Childbirth is a peak experience of our life. It's transformational. We go in one way and we come out another way. So these rites of passage and these initiatory experiences like that can be much like a mystical experience with a psychedelic. And then we know that end of life, that we're using psilocybin for that, for these insights. And that portal work, that birth work, death work, and having these initiations in between in life can be very revelatory. So I want to make sure there's space for us to acknowledge the sacredness of these experiences and make room for them. I'll explain more. And then the third thing, navigating altered spaces. I'm going to compare childbirth with psychedelic journeys. And a note, I am not promoting use of psychedelics with birth. Maybe it's a thing somewhere. I really don't know. I didn't even do any research on it. I absolutely am not saying to do these together at all. We're probably pretty clear on that, right? Yeah. Next slide. All right. The way we birth and rebirth matters. So, what I have here in bold is the way we do childbirth here in this country. 98% of us birth in the hospital, and we think that's normal. About 120 years ago, it was flipped. More about 98% of us were birthing out of the hospital, and that was normal. But then the medical model emerged, and then we started moving into the hospitals, moving into the facilities where the obstetrician started to be the one who knew. Okay? It wasn't the midwife who knew. She didn't know at that time. So there was a power grab away from the women who knew, the women who gathered, and went into the hands of the doctors. And now they're firmly in the hands of the surgeons. Obstetricians are surgeons. And I will tell you now that I am absolute, like I teach childbirth education, I prepare people, couples, people to birth in however way that makes them feel safe and empowered. Okay? There is not one model that serves all. And that's exactly the point, because not anybody births the same, right? Even one person who's had 3 kids, 6 kids, not one birth is the same. When you journey, when you have a psychedelic trip, is every trip the same? Not one. There's a wildness to this. There's a difference. So, my point is that we need to have different models supporting different types of birth. So, what I am pointing out here to you in the psychedelic community is that we've essentially caged birth into a medical model, into an authoritarian model of the people in the know and the machines that go ping, and you know, the birthing mother is wearing the patient gown and being the patient, right? Somehow, and it's seen through the lens of pathology. Something can happen at any second, and we're going to drive this with routine interventions. And this is, you know, I'm the one in the white coat, and I'm going to monitor everything so you're safe. And this is when I give you this drug now, and this is how we're going to progress this along. Within our bodies, within our nervous system, within our DNA, within our species, we know how to birth. Doesn't it make sense? Maybe it's 35% of births in the United States are cesarean births. They're surgical births. Seen through the eyes of a surgeon. The World Health Organization says maybe medically indicated number for cesareans, surgical birth, is maybe 11 to 15%. So we're way over the mark there. Some places in Brazil and Mexico City, it's 90% cesarean rate. 90.
France is like 5. France is 5.
Yeah, there are places that are lower, and it's usually because there's a midwifery model that is the primary model. The midwifery model of care sees birth as normal, a normal process, and not so much through the eyes of fear. And they do provide care for the lower risk birthers. But there's room for physiologic birth within that model. So it's just interesting information. I just want you to see how over the years that this wildness of birth, this wildness of this, almost like this species imperative for this rite of passage, for this transformational journey for everyone who births, wherever you are on the non-binary scale, that, you know, however you birth, you have the way inside of your nervous system. It's not in your neocortex where we figure out how am I going to birth. We have to follow our inner guide, our inner lead, and we have to release and let go and get in the flow of our more primitive nervous system. And we're not used to that. We're used to dictating things from our neocortex and figuring things out and say, I'm going to do this now, I'm going to take a shower now, and this will relieve this now, and when's the baby coming, let's induce so I can have the date. And there's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of sideways and a lot of unknowns in birth. And you see how this is kind of moving into like that altered state, like a psychedelic experience, right? So here we try and cage it, and we give us false assurances. Well, in the medical model, you'll be safer. Well, we don't have a good maternal mortality rate here. In fact, one of the worst in the first world countries. So it's a false security. We just have to look at ourselves, course correct, listen to this type of feedback, and know, like, we need to course correct and not have psychedelics as an emerging field do the same thing as birth. Okay? We need room for transformation. We need room to open and awaken in our own ways. All right? Next slide. All right. So, models for psychedelic journeys. There's the indigenous healing method with ritual, sacred circle, different ways of doing that. And this is, I corrected this slide that's in my thinking, it's the medical model. And clinical research model is starting to become that paradigm that is emerging the fastest. And, the two therapists in the room, they administer the dose, the agreed upon dose, and that's how you do it. You meet before, you travel, and you meet afterward, and that's the way we do it. But that's not the only way to do it. We can't cage it in and say that's the only sanctioned way. So, community-supported model is that we can meet in circles with our communities, have a sisterhood circle, have a men's group circle, have the freedom to go into nature and do it yourself. And recreation, this falls, recreational, freedom, being in nature, all different ways of doing it. Okay, next slide. Kathleen Maclean. It's Katherine Maclean. Oh my God, I messed that up on the slide. Dr. Katherine Maclean is a PhD research scientist, and she did her internship and worked at Johns Hopkins University with the research on psilocybin. And she's a lead author on several of the studies, and one of them is like openness. So I'll leave that to you to look up. But I, and Charles and some of these ladies here had the pleasure of seeing her at the Imagine Convergence, which is a great festival, or it's not a festival, it's a conference, a visionary conference that we did this winter. And she talked about her perspective on how things are going in the emergence of what model is happening. And really, she is a strong voice for the community-based model, because she has worked in the medical model. She's seen it, she's seen its failings, she's seen its limitations, and I'm sharing her, like 3 of these slides are her showing us what are some of the downfalls of that. So downfalls is lack of access. Now we know the cost of pharmaceuticals, and they're charging, for HIV drugs, they're charging crazy amount of money for some of this stuff. And how are psychedelics going to be effective with this? We know that the price would go up in this different model. Access to insurance. Who has it? Do you have the right insurance? Do you have the state insurance? Like, what is, who can have this experience? Lack of appropriately trained professionals. Is it appropriate to charge $20 to $40K for a life-saving thing? And one thing that I can say is that in postpartum, about 1 in 7 women get postpartum depression or postpartum mood disorder. It could be anxiety, obsessive compulsiveness, depression, and sometimes it moves into suicidal ideation. And in that time, ketamine is good for helping with suicide. And so there's a new drug that they have developed for this, and it's like a 60-hour continuous infusion of this ketamine drug, and specifically for postpartum mood disorder to help with the suicide. And the cost of that was around $30,000 to get that treatment because of all the people who had to be there to make it safe, and
that it was days and hours of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a possibly life-saving medication right there preventing suicide, preventing homicide, if that turned to psychotic behavior to the children. So why are we charging that much money? So again, when we get this whole medical model involved, we have to be mindful of these crazy costs. So disappointing. Hope that gets better. Okay, so private funding there's bias in clinical research as well. Next slide. Just quickly going to go through these. Next slide. Thank you. Systemic racism and sexism. This is a model. I was trained in the Western medical model, and when you're trained in it, you see its flaws. When you work in it, in the hospital, you see its flaws too, and you just want to make things better, but it's hard to change big institutions. So, and these, racism, sexism, privilege, all of these things are real, and they are acted out in these organizations as well. So maybe if there were a community-based model, that then if we had like a people of color circle, that they felt safe exploring their inner landscape within their tribe or their people, then why couldn't we have something like this? This would be maybe a little bit more prohibitive to that. We have to go to the people who know. So just some things to consider. Medical errors, adverse outcomes in recent clinical trials. That's a hot topic. You might even just follow Katherine Maclean on Facebook, and she's a very strong voice speaking out some of this stuff. It's also focused on the individual, not on the family or community. Next slide. Thank you. Issues of consent, ethics, accountability, and boundaries with the people administering. Sexual contact between therapist and client. So there's controversy now about that on one of the lead MAPS researchers who had sexual contact with a client during the phase 2 trials of the MDMA study. And where there's even a lawsuit from that person toward the therapist. So it's just, I don't know the ins and outs about it, but I'm just saying this is just part of it. And with a community-based model, it might be that we have more eyes, more accountability on each other, for each other. Lack of context for spiritual and religious experiences as well. And this takes us to the next point. Okay, next slide. So she thinks, psychedelics for people, not profit. And psychedelic sanctuaries, like having these nature places that you can safely go, and they have a Zendo tent or a place where you can learn about, like the Ask Anything thing that you guys are doing here. I think that's a lovely thing to do. Ask any question you want. So this is part of her vision. And she calls them psychedelic ambassadors, those who can help and those who know, and we're all learning from each other, etc. So, all right, next slide. And this brings us to my second topic, is that these experiences are revelatory. All right? The sacred, spiritual, and mystical aspects need to be acknowledged, sought out, and protected, nurtured. And in the medical model, so me as a birth doula who is trying to help the mother stay in her rhythm and stay in her zone, and the medical staff come in and flip on the light. Okay, we're going to take your blood pressure now, and then it's just, we work so hard to get her in that zone, in that altered space, right? We call it in the zone. What do we call it when we're in the zone with a psychedelic experience? But it takes a lot of work to do that, and certainly flipping on stoner lights, right when you do that, who likes that? Nobody. Okay, next slide. It's just basic. You're at a party, you don't mess with people's high right there. Yeah. So what constitutes a mystical experience? So I looked to Sasha Shulgin's rating scale, and he has a rating scale about how active and what a drug can do, a substance can do. 0, +1, +2, +3, +4, and a +4 experience is what you're seeing here, a rare and precious transcendental state. A peak experience, a religion, he's just using, it's like Rumi, like many fingers pointing to the same moon, right? Like lots of different ways to try to tell you and articulate, like this is it, this was the experience. Next slide. State of bliss, a participation mystique, he wrote. A connectedness with both interior and exterior universes. So there's some revelation going on. Isn't this the stuff that's what we want? Is this the stuff? Yeah. This is beautiful. Yeah. This is what we want. We don't want to say like, oh my gosh, I'm just so tiny, but I'm everything. It's just like it's contradictory, but it's the same and true at the same time. And people with these revelatory experiences, big experiences like that, a lot of times they don't share these experiences because people are going to think I'm crazy. They're going to. And isn't that funny that we set up a society that when we talk about these wonderful transformational experiences, these out of body, these within the all that is experiences that we're called crazy. Wow, I think we might have just like pulled the matrix and, the red pill, maybe. We just looked behind the veil. Maybe we have a little bit more insight than, I don't know, just being on the hamster wheel of life. It's worth a thought, worth a listen. I've written a book, and I'm still editing it. It's called Trace. And it's about all, it's like traces of a mystery. It's about these parents that recount their stories of how these babies, these spirits, maybe came to them in a dream, like before conception or during conception, and then like in pregnancy, what experiences did they have with this child? Like I dreamt of his eyes, and and he told me his name was Silas. Like this is like a client of mine last week who says, she had a dream of her child just weeks before he was born, and she said he looked at her in her dream, and she looked at him with love because she's been bonding with him, like this. But she said what struck me is that he just communicated how much he loved me, and it never occurred to me before that he loves me too. And so he is communicating that to her in her dream, and he tells her, my name is Silas. And so she names him Silas. How awesome. Wow. Yeah, that goes in the book. That's what I'm saying. But she says, I haven't told very many people that. Why? What's the reason? So, here we are, finding the others. Absolutely. This is what we need to do. So that book needs, you can nudge in these altered spaces to get this book published for several years. And because we have to have places of validation that these experiences are real, right? Instead of us feeling isolated that we're crazy. What I want to say about the scale is something that I very much love, is it's this. It isn't based on a specific drug. Meaning, like 5-MeO-DMT will get you there every time. Like that's the one. They call it the God molecule. But that's not a guarantee that you will have this state of samadhi, right? It has to do with everything. Are you ready for it? What is the set and setting? And I know we say a lot about that. There are more S's, or 6 S's. I'm going to go through them. But it's not necessarily repeatable with the same drug because we journey different every time. So maybe you've got that big experience one night, and then another experience was just like, whoa, my shadow side came out, I was in contraction, a lot of it was challenging, and then you have to integrate, heal, reconcile, all of those things. Okay, next slide. So Bill Richards states what is a mystical experience in his book. Next slide. That's it. And I made it an acronym of SUNLIT so I could remember it. So he doesn't know this, but that's what I have done to remember it. Look at that cool formation in the sky. Pretty rad. Okay, next slide. All right, and these are the 6 things that make this mystical experience. So, sacred. There's this transformational mystical experience is sacred. There's something so special about it. Usually, people are having a sense of unity. Okay, there's a field of a unified field that they somehow are enlightened to, that they're connected within, that they're part of the all. And it's noetic, it's of the mind, it's within. It's not something that they're looking outside of their body and they are experiencing. It's within themselves that they are experiencing it. L, usually it's love. Usually it's love, joy, bliss. Right? Let's make this illegal. Let's say it's a Schedule 1 drug. Right? What's this? Why are we making it a Schedule 1? Okay. So ineffability. So when you go to describe these experiences, they have an ineffable quality to them. There's just like, I can't quite put my finger on it and describe it at all. There is, I don't know, it's just like no words. And then when we think of like what I just described as many fingers pointing at the same moon, it's just like I describe the beloved like this, or I describe the holy like this. And each person has an access point in that moment of what they think that beauty is. And sometimes it's in a song they can describe it. And thank God we have Alex Gray, and he can paint like that. And then we have all these beautiful artists that can do sound. We've got the desert dwellers. We've got people that are just bringing things through, right? So, transcendence. There's this feeling of transcending space and time, of this linear time, shifting of dimensions a bit, and that we have maybe broken free from the constructs that we've created and encased ourselves in this life. So, it sounds like a pretty good night. Next. So birth can be very much like a psychedelic experience. There's a lot of pain involved. There's intensity. There's intensity of things. And when I say pain, it used to be when I was a younger childbirth educator, I really thought, like, I don't want to tell women that the childbirth is painful, because everything that we describe as painful is negative. And in this culture, like as a PT, they come to me, they're in pain, my shoulder hurts, my abs hurt, whatever it is that hurts, let's make it stop. So we fix the problem. Because maybe that is noxious stimuli, maybe that's pathology, that's something that we have to correct. And that's good, we can do that. But birth is different. That sensation is normal. It is stretching. It is expanding. It's contracting. It's fatiguing. Like all different types of sensory physical experience, but it's much more than that. There's an emotional ride going on, mental game trying to stay on top of it, and the spiritual aspect, which really a lot of us don't have a lot of context for. We're disconnected from our hearts and souls a lot of the time. So here we are in this altered space of expansion, yet contraction. The contrasts are very much there. Working, but there's this happening at the same time. So as a doula, who who I'm more intuitive. I'm more on the intuitive side, meaning that I can notice the subtle. I can notice more subtle things, and it's not. I'm not just five sensory. If I feel it, touch it, it's there. I can sense things just a little bit more. And so being in a room where a woman is in that state and she is working with her body and opening and expanding to allow another soul to come through, she really becomes the portal from this world to that world to this world. That's a big deal. Yeah, it's a rite of passage. We've never done that before in this life. We don't remember that. It's a big experience. So it's like, oh. So it's nice to have somebody there with you who maybe gets that a bit. Rather than negates it and say, oh, it's getting pretty painful now. You're about this many centimeters and it's time for your epidural, and let's let you tap out, and then you can rest or read the paper and just get on with things until it's time to push.
Oh no, are you sure you don't want to tap out? How about now?
How about now?
How about now?
How about
Are you
now?
sure?
You don't have to be a
This
hero.
is painful. You shouldn't keep doing this.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. You want something to take the edge off? Right in that moment where you could really use it. It's like, girl, let her do it. She's got this. You know, and the interesting part is we've done it for years. Years. We've got this. So that undermining from a woman nurse, perhaps, saying like, come on, come on, come on. Like that somebody must think, a woman who knows, thinks that I can't do it. Undermining. And then it gets passed on and on. Not about that, you know. So good that doulas have become so commonplace. That helps mitigate the fear. Like when women are trained to be with other birthing parents, and it's not just women, there are some men doulas as well, they start not being so afraid of fear. When you go into births with women, shoot, I'll speak from my experience, I'm just like, shoot, women can do this. They're badass. Like, oh, okay. I never saw that kind of raw power before, and she did it. She just was like doing this kind of step. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And she's like, it's like I was snowshoeing up a mountain, and she was just like doing a something step. I don't even remember what step she was talking about doing. And that's what got her through. She just was doing the switchbacks up a mountain. And that was working for her. And she eventually got to the pinnacle of her mountain. And that's when she got to push out her baby and meet her son. Having faith, that knowledge, and that confidence that they can do it. That is important to bring that into the birth room. And, in fact, the psychedelic literature states that as well. I'm pulling from James Fadiman's book, the Psychedelic Explorer's Guide, that if the person, the sitter, the person who's with the person who is journeying has to go pee, and it's like sitting there denying having to do that, or it's like, oh God, I have a bad feeling about this, and like perseverating on something negative, that the journeyer is going to sense that. And it's like, the answer is, that is absolutely true. So there are more subtle energies going on than than our consensus reality and our mainstream reality kind of let on. So going in and learning some of these subtleties is very useful. So I'm glad you're here and that we're talking about this. Now I'm talking about it. Okay, next. Oh, there's the portal. Looks intense. So, next slide.
Good job, Mom.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I want to say, I want to just point out some things that became obvious to me when I started learning about the psychedelic realm is that, like, in birth, I know from being in so many, linear time bends. Like, oh my God, like, we've been helping helping this mama in the basement, and then we see, oh my gosh, the sun is rising outside. Like, how long have we been here? I don't know. We've just been in this ultra different zone, this different dimension. Same with psychedelic experience. Time bends while you're in it. And back to the birth in time, they say the most dangerous instrument to be introduced to the birth room is the clock. Because we measure this different dimensional experience with linear time. You're tying us to the fourth dimension. Back, bibbidi-bobbidi, back the F up. Yeah. We are not with you in the fourth dimension. Sometimes we are, but not if we're in flow. So, things can be unpredictable, and it demands us to go with the flow. We can only plan so much, but things are unpredictable, and I say there's a wildness to it. There's a wildness to birth. There's a wildness to taking these substances. There are no guarantees. Am I going to have a good time? Is this the right dose? I'm going to have the concert dose, and we're just going to, accentuate stuff, or am I going to go on a freaking healing journey that I didn't expect to be in fetal position on the grass? Is there a tent around with people who know that could help with this? So, again, a wildness can't be contained. Same dose, same whatever, but different experience. Can go sideways. What are your plans? I'll get to that. Choose your drugs wisely. In birth, when a nurse says, do you want something to take the edge off? She's talking about administering a narcotic. A narcotic does not take the peak of pain off. If the mother is having trouble dealing with the peak of pain, a narcotic is not the drug of choice. If she needs a bit more rest and feel like that things are spacing out in between the contractions, then maybe a narcotic would be the drug of choice. Maybe there are more indications that I'm not thinking of, but it's not the peak of pain. Narcotics, being on narcotics, make it more difficult to cope and be on top of things. And connect. It cuts you off from your own internal natural endorphins, your own natural narcotics. Next slide. So, I've said that. The birthing parent becomes a portal and bridges worlds. And my business is Birth Portal Services because I've learned this a long time ago. And I felt it in the birth room being with women, especially when they are in that physiologic birthing mode rather than a medically managed birth. It's harder to hear the sacred in a medically managed facility. I can do it, but it's hard. And people who aren't looking for it and are untrained of it, they miss it. They miss out on that part. That's a good part. But, when I can hold that and they're up for it and they're up for experiencing that and just being all in it, then we can attune to that more. And that portal manifested in my awareness with my second birth at the hardest part of my birth. It was so intense, its transition, the time before pushing, and it was so painful, and I just had to have all my birth team just go hum around me. They just created a wall of sound around me because I needed that too, and it was so intense and so painful. And while that's going on, I see this white tunnel. It's not even a tunnel. It's just like this white portal open in my third eye because I am here and I'm just seeing it in my head. And I was like, whoa, what is that? It's like the eye of God. I don't even know what that is because it was that, it was that altering. This is a home birth. There was no drugs involved. And but then I noticed if I wasn't feeling that intense pain, that vision would go away, that visual would go away. So I needed that contrast of being so intense to be able to get this high, this very fascinating. So I feel like I've seen the portal as I was becoming the portal to birth my daughter. That's pretty badass. That's good. Yeah. I want women to feel themselves as that portal and be recognized for it.
Amen.
Yeah, right on. Thank you guys for being with me. Seriously, like experience different dimensions, so I touched upon that. You know, that same woman who her baby visited her, Silas's mom, she said to me, she was telling me her birth experience because we do post-birth rehab for the abdominals and the pelvic floor, etc. And she was saying, like, I haven't told anybody about this part of my birth, but when I was pushing for a long time. And this is a home birth. And I was pushing for a long time and he wasn't coming down. And his heart rate started becoming non-reassuring, meaning like I needed to push that baby out. And she said, and that baby wasn't coming. And she said, I don't know, I just knew I had to do the impossible. I had to just leap out of my body to go get him. I had to go into the different dimension, scoop him up, and bring him down with me so I could push him out. So I did the unthinkable. I didn't even know I could do that. I just did it, grabbed him, and then I could push him out. And that baby still needed some resuscitation on the other end of that. But then that spirit, embodied that baby. And she was busy blinking, and she said, I couldn't quite, see straight as I was on the other side of this. So...
1 hour mark and volume.
Okay, sorry, you guys. So here she is on the other side of this, blinking, trying to come back to this dimension because she just met her son there to bring him through. She said, I swear it was the day after I finished this talk, the night before I finished it, and she said to me, 8 a.m., first client, she said it was like a DMT experience. I said, what? Who sent you to talk about this? She never tried DMT, but she says, isn't that what release when you're born and when you die? And I said, well, that's what they say. So, pretty fascinating. So our ancestors and spirit allies show up to these big events like this. And, was it Terence McKenna who said something, he saw the machine elves or... Yeah. Like you see beings, right? So ancestors show up for births. They do. It's very fascinating. I remember being at a birth and like the mother and the father were just over there and they were slow dancing and the room just changed and I'm just like, whoa. Like I felt a presence standing next to me and I'm just like, something shifted in this room. What is going on? And the birthing mother said, oh, they're here. Okay. Do tell me who's here. She says, oh, that's my dad's mother. Okay. She's got way more skills than I do. So I'm like, cool. And then I just it was just this altered experience. It was almost like it was raining trillium in the room. I know how to explain it, but because of her field creating a different dimension, and these beings being here is just a fascinating moment of her birth. And her niece, who her sister birthed 3 years before, had died right upon her birth because there was a knot in the umbilical cord, and it was devastating to her sister, and I was her sister's doula too. And And that child showed up and was twirling on the bed where she was birthing. Was such a trip. So I probably, am I thinking I wouldn't be so bold to tell you that story unless she was the one to completely interpret it too. And I'm like, oh God, this is happening. It's not just me. Fascinating. So that's an altered state, right? Okay. So, and it's life and death and birth and death, and the veil is thin. And it's normal. This is what we do. We do it. It's normal. Okay, next. So these are my last points. I wanted to show you how similar these are, and just how we prepare for these journeys, how we go through the journey, and how we do post-journey healing, processing, integrating, and living in expanded awareness. Claim the goal. Don't sit in trauma. Don't sit and wish it wasn't like something. Go claim it and integrate it into your life. Next slide. Next slide's good. Yeah. Okay. So something I teach in my childbirth class, there are 4 things to help contribute to a natural childbirth, and that's: have you done your preparation? Set up your support. Are you motivated for this? And then, what's your path? You can do all the preparation you can do, but there's an unfolding path that comes before you. And, luck, not luck. I don't like to put luck, but whatever it is unfolds, you're going to navigate. All right, next slide. So the 6 S's of a psychedelic journey. Again, this is a James Fadiman book. Setting, substance, sitter, session, and situation. And I'm going to go through those briefly. 3 R's of childbirth, Penny Simpkin came up with, and I'm sure her bosom would be swelling with pride if I were talking about psychedelics and the 3 R's. Anyway, it's good. It's all right. So those are coping measures in childbirth. So next slide. So I'm using this framework because it's applicable to both birth and psychedelic journeys. What is the mindset? What's your mental setup for a good journey? Okay, set your intention, hold it lightly. What are your goals, intentions, and then go with the flow, right? Next. You think it's going to be setting? Next slide. Yes! That's all we talk about now. Okay, the physical environment and atmosphere in the literature shouldn't be a clinical or hospital setting because that is not conducive to good journeying in the literature. I think we just need to apply that to birth. Outdoors create an external experience. Being indoors can create a more internal experience. Next slide. Substance. What are you taking? What's your dosage? Has it been tested? So again, dosage for a desired effect. Do you want a mystical experience? You go with this. Do you want a theater or concert dose? There's that. Microdose, very popular. It's trending. Subperceptible, and that's a possibility. In childbirth, what's your plan for medication? Have a plan. Have a plan B. Have a code word. Tell us what it is. Cacao. I do want that epidural. Next. So, a sitter. It's someone who is riding the journey with you that is not on the altered substances. A doula in birth is who we are, and my daughter Lily is like, that's a midwife too. And I'm like, yes, good. We love it. Yes, someone who is caretaking for you, watching out for you, helping you, but not guiding you all the time, right? With a psychedelic sitter, we know better than to sit there and ask with leading questions. It's great, isn't it? If you don't do that, what's your experience? Neutrality, letting them define. Same with birth. We want the woman or birthing parent to have a beautiful, good birth as she defines it, or they define it. So, the energy of the sitter matters. Next slide. Session, how long is it? Length of the journey. Situation, that addresses, we need integration afterward. Okay, next slide. So, still preparing. Relaxation, rhythm, and ritual is a way of organizing coping measures so that we can have a plan to do things in labor that help us cope. Relaxation can be useful. It's the opposite of fight or flight. Fight or flight and fear and panic arrests any altered state, right? You can't really fight or flight either of those. You're in it. It's going to end. How can you get through this part? So rhythm, rhythmic breathing, and ritual is, let's say I'm doing this. During every contraction, and that's the ritual. And it works until it doesn't work, and then we switch up the ritual. Okay. Next slide. Great. So Psychedelic Journey, something to prepare us. That original TSA is the trust, surrender, and allow. And just maybe that can even be a mantra as you are moving into that flow. Oh, well, there's a mantra too. You can have a mantra as well. Sacred objects. What is going to give you comfort? Ritual space. What are you calling in? What's your intention? Next slide. Attention focusing. You know, what are you going to be focusing? You can focus your mental attention on this. You can release your mind and just feel something in your hand. It's going to be more tactile. Do you want push? Do you want warmth? Comfort? The answer is yes. Managing the five senses. When we do an internal journey and we want to get in the zone, it's good to dim the five senses. That pops us out of the internal realm. And notice the changes of the arc of the journey and know what to expect. Next slide. I think it's important to know what you're getting in for. You know, what you're getting in to. You know, a birth, it's really a lot harder to know how long it's going to be. We don't know. If you've had a birth, if you birthed previously and it was a fairly fast birth, it might be a fast birth this time. That's within the realm of possibility, but it could be slow, but maybe it's more of a likelihood that it's faster. Also, with the substances you choose, you have to know, like, what is the arc so that you can prep for that. Is this an all-night thing? Are we going to be done in 6 hours? Or is this a launch and we're back in 40 minutes? You know? Next slide. So I got this from tripsafe.org. I think that's nice of them to put something like this up. And so they've graphed a mushroom journey. Never seen this before, and I thought it was great. And I don't know if you can see it. From 0 to 360 to 6 hours, this is how the arc goes. So somewhere in there's going to be a peak of that experience, and then you're going to be going down. So somewhere, if you're like clutching, you're in that fetal position mode, and you're really just trying to get through, you know that you're going to be on the other side of this arc at one point or another. And we all know this is finite at one point. Okay, next. So this is the arc of birth. Up here we have the cervical dilation. We're trying to open to 10 centimeters. And this is the time. And it could you can put a different set of numbers for different birth because you cannot predict this. Saying that it's 14 hours would be a lie. We just don't know. But the arc, usually it starts out pretty flat and slow, and somewhere it increases when we get into active labor. And then transition, and then the pushing phase happens. It's a little bit of a different stage, and then we have the descent of the baby coming down. So we have two things that we're tracking. Okay. Next. So here, these journeys are compared. So here in birth, we have the latent, active, and transition phases of labor. Then the descent and the pushing out of the baby. Birth of the baby. The placenta comes out in about 30 minutes or so. Then there's the initial postpartum healing, which takes 6 to 8 weeks. It's good for us to know that ahead of time, too. Then we have secondary healing, processing, and integration, right? And then we come to the psychedelic journey, and I have the mushroom here. This arrowhead is where I got this information. So basic ignition upon intake, and acceleration in 20 minutes, leaving the atmosphere in 40 minutes. You are in flight at 70 minutes, and the peak is at 130 minutes. Interesting to note, deceleration happens. Somewhere here you do a touchdown, and reality, you're back in 12 hours. Jet lag, maybe about 7 days, and then you do your integration and processing. It's good to know these things a little bit ahead of time. All right, next. So, nurturing an altered state during the journey, it's just like we have to know how to make informed decisions in the peak of our fatigue and during journeys. Like, what do we want? What are we sure we don't want? And what are our boundaries? What are our triggers? And can we write that on a birth plan and turn that into the birth team that's there to help us with that? Minimize interruptions. Distract the mental body. When you get into your head, it's hard to nurture an altered state, right? So a lot of this is like, if we think about moving up the ladder of arousal towards an orgasm. Just in case you were sleeping, I said orgasm. So, yeah. So as we move toward an orgasm, if we start thinking like, oh my God, does my stomach look too fat? Oh my God, is that the kids? Oh my God, they're going to walk in the door and that's bad. You start really getting into things, right, into your mental body. And that interrupts the flow of what is meant to be happening, what is rising. It's hard to follow your body's lead when your mental body is... So, find a strategy to control for that or help decrease that. Mantras help. Keep in a flow state, rhythm, relaxation, ritual. Spontaneous versus planned rituals. Sometimes we plan, we're going to take a shower, we're going to bring my yoga mat and get in child's pose, and we're going to listen to Enya. That is for sure what I'm going to do. Please, girl. We don't know. Then we get in there and it's like, okay, nobody can touch me. I cannot hear any music except the dripping of the faucet going down into the tub, and that's the only thing that is getting me through this whole experience for a few hours. Okay, good. We didn't know, and we're just going to go with what is. So do you like to be touched? Do you want to be talked to? Music? All of these things shift and change. Next. Okay. Don't direct. Follow the lead of the inner self. And I have this for the psychedelic experience, but also for the birth experience, releasing your ego. You really set yourself up. Well, I am a yoga instructor, and I have set myself up for the home birth experience, and everybody knows I said I was going to be a home birther, and then, oh my God, I'm transferring, and now I'm getting an epidural, and now that doesn't match my image of who I think I should be, and that really screws with women, right? Especially in that post-birth processing of feeling like you failed. So we have to leave room for the melting of our ego with the old self of who we think we are, the story. And I have the default mode network, the D and N here. Getting out of that groove of who we think we are so we can discover who we are becoming. Panic response does not help anything. Expect contractions and expansions and emotional hurdles in all of it. It's all good. It's all welcome. Birth, you don't think you can do it? You're doing it anyway. It's just, it started, you're in, it's going to end at one point. I expect a woman to, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, most of them say, I don't think I can do this. Fair enough. that makes absolute sense. You've never done this before. It's hard. You're reaching your ends. You don't know where the ends are. I get that, but I'm right here with you. We're just going to breathe right through it. And I am here, and I've been with other women, and I've seen them do it, and I just am holding space with a, you got this. You've got this. It's bigger than us. It's bigger than us. Let it move through you. Next. All of these things. And my most famous saying is such a base saying, but it works for my childbirth classes, because if those people can do it, I certainly can do it, Because seriously, everybody's doing it. So why you? Why are you the one? Why is this the time you finally figured out, like, you're the stand-up? You finally can't do the thing that everybody can do. All the stupid people can do it, but you, now we've got proof. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. But if we give her a chance to actually do it and not tap her out, I mean, it's okay. It's merciful to tap out and have medication. I don't think that as a failure. I really don't. But I do want her to get a chance to see what she's made of, if that's what she's looking for.
And to be the one to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next slide. Absolutely. Next slide, if you could. Yes, birth partners. So what are you here to do as a birth partner to support this? See, I think men and partners of a birthing parent could apply their knowledge of psychedelic experiences and navigating those experiences to helping a birthing parent. I really think you can. I think it would make it less abstract for you. I'd like you to bring your skills in and support that. Being guardian of the birthplace and, just love. Next slide.
30-minute warning.
Oh, thank you. Next slide. Good. So, always have a safety plan in place. What's the benefit maximization? Harm reduction. What's your plan A, B, and C? Again, informed decision making. Plan for medication management. Booster. Are you going to transfer to the hospital? Or hospital meds I have here. Have a plan, try and stick to it, even in altered states. If you're a survivor, try and identify ahead of time what triggers you and what makes you feel unsafe so that you can put boundaries around those to keep you feeling safe and in the room. Next. And adjust your perspective, your lens. What's a challenging trip versus a bad trip? It was terrible, that was awful, I reject it all. And we can be traumatized by these experiences. I'm really not Pollyanna about it. I've been to all different types of births and postpartums, and sometimes it's traumatic. I get that. And so, but if there are challenges, if it was nothing but shadow work, can we look at it? Can we take a look and see if we can do some working with that and integrating? See the world through new eyes. Things are not as you thought. You are not you, who you were. A equals not A. Who are you on the other side of the experience? Can you let yourself unfold? Next. And post-healing. I feel like after you birth, the woman has a 6 weeks appointment with the practitioner and is discharged, never to be seen again unless there's a complication that needs to be attended to. She's dropped from care. That baby continues to have periodic appointments. But here's the mother in this, like, on this other side of birth, and she is, I did it, no matter how she did it. And then maybe she's just like, I was, it was nothing like I planned, but I made it, I did it, here I am. However she's embodying that in that moment, I feel like the attention goes from her to like, oh, look at the baby. It's all about the baby. And here she's standing like, but look at, do you not see what I just did? And they're just like, oh, is he a good baby? Is, how much you weigh? Oh, that's great. Is he sleeping through the night? The worst questions you could ever ask somebody, but that's the one that always is asked. No, they never sleep through the night in the beginning. Quit asking. But here she is, has this major experience. Like, I don't know who my identity is here. I'm discombobulated. I'm so expanded. I'm so sensitive to everything. You were the portal. You're so open. You had to do that. But there's no context in our culture to see that, to acknowledge it, to support it. And I feel like that's part of the contributing factors to this dissonance for mental instability in the postpartum. Yes, it's hormonally based. Yes, it's fatigue based. All of these things too. But there's this aspect of, doing what you just did and then not even seeing that mother in her power. And all she's seeing is the belly and the jelly. And all she's seeing is the, oh my God, my hair, and I'm wearing diapers. And it's like, and that's what she's reduced to. Because nobody is acknowledging what she just did, and especially in a cultural context, and that needs to change. Part of why I'm talking to you about this. Next slide. So I have their ketamine may be useful for those times that they need it. We'll see how that goes. Next slide. We're so close. We're in the post-journey. Next slide. Okay. So, who in the culture can be this parent's sacred mirror? Or the kid that took psychedelics, who had this major expansion experience and has nobody to debrief it with and has no context to put it together. It's illegal. You're a bad kid for doing that. If you get caught, bad. Yeah, but I saw this and I expanded in this way, and it's like, oh my gosh, I think I saw my future. You can't tell anybody that. So we need to be each other's sacred mirrors, and I think that's part of why we're meeting here in these places, is that we don't want to continue the paradigm the way it is now. We need to open up and be better to each other. Yeah. And always, always, always expand into your next journey. However hard it is, that's part of the game. Remember, we probably all heard Bill Hicks. It's just a ride. We got this, right? People have come back from psychedelic journeys, from birth, from near-death experiences. It's just a ride. We need to process our trauma. We need to do the inner work to rise up and not be the walking wounded from birth. That's what I'm talking about too. Like these ladies in the checkout line sees my pregnant clients or whatever, and they're just like, get the epidural, don't do it this way, and blah, 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 and just trauma. Oh my God, I had the worst, Girl, let's take care of you. Let's process that with you so you don't have to project it onto her next experience. Because that's part of the growth. All right, next slide. Oh, and there's the sun. Next slide. And this is just my final words on this. Implication and applications is protect the diversity and the individual sovereignty of our birth and psychedelic journeys in all of its manifestations and ways. Be wary of one model, closing into cage and birth and rebirth psychedelic journeys. Our emerging paradigm for psychedelics must leave room for the indigenous, therapeutic, sacred, recreation, and whatever else emerges. And that's the medical model too. I didn't put that there. But next. The sacred, spiritual, and mystical aspects of these experiences need to be acknowledged, sought out, protected, and nurtured. The expanded consciousness cultivated in these +4 experiences might be the key to help humanity ascend. Right? How are we going to get out of this mess? It can't be in our thinking brain. Part of this is why we're having a revolution in the theater right here, the evolution here. What's going to be the nudge that gets us to the next level? I'm in. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Let's maybe not figure it out, but let's be in the flow of it and see what we can do to be a part of it. Next. So, thoughtful preparation sets us up for safe and transformative journeys that can be integrated into our lives to help raise our personal and collective consciousness. Next. And that's it. Thank you very, very much.
Another round of applause for April, please. So we are recording this, so I'm going to go around with the mic. So please wait until the mic is in front of you to talk so we can catch the question as well as the answer. So who has some questions, comments? Show of hands out here.
I have a question.
Hi, so earlier you said during the peak of pain and during childbirth that a narcotic would not be the best drug to take you down off the peak of pain. What would be a medication that you would suggest?
I would say more the regional medication of the epidural is by far the best pain medication that we have in childbirth today.
Okay.
Others out here. On that side? Just 1 second.
Do you have any experience with hypnobirthing?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a great. Oh yeah, absolutely. So that is using any technique that helps you move into a different state of awareness, and that helps slow down your brain waves into more. I don't know if you get quite into the theta realm with that, but that when we slow down our brain waves like that, we can have mystical experiences like this. And in birth, it's good to be in those brain waves that are more slow like that. So using hypnosis and hypnotic techniques can be very good. Breathing, like holotropic breathing can be useful to help getting into these altered states too. Different meditative practices, chanting, all of these that slow down our brain waves so that we can actually receive more information and access to the mystery, the things that we can't put our finger on.
I'm interested to hear more about your intention behind your book in sharing these women's experiences.
Mm-hmm. My intention, I'll tell you where it started. It was I was taking a bath and I was just meditating while taking a bath at night, and it really was a spirit download for me. It was just kind of I felt a presence come down into my head, and it was just said, like, here is a book that you will write, and you'll collect all these stories from parents and basically reflect those truths back to people who can be reading that. So my intention is to follow through on what I was tasked to do, and it's to get to help people cultivate their intuition. I have a few chapters on like what is intuition, demystifying intuition, and how to cultivate your intuition, and then those stories are all there to support that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Others? Yes.
So I'm curious if you have any suggestions for things that people who are not in the medical field for us to do, that we can do to help
change the conversation around birth from being something that's embarrassing or uncomfortable to share into something that's powerful and an extraordinary experience?
Yeah, I think when we can be in conversation with people or connection with people sharing their birth experience and approaching that with the openness and curiosity and deep listening, that's really where I think the gold is, you know. And really my doula training helped me with that aspect of really being there with people and listening, like what is it from their viewpoint that they're holding sacred that I can help them amplify in their birth. And I think just hearing their birth experience is very validating for them. And if they hear that you're doing that non-judgmentally, you're going to hear more gold or those dreams, those other experiences that they maybe won't tell other people because they're maybe feeling judged. So, and hear the good experiences as well. I feel like people who have good and positive and fast and more easy, nothing's easy, but like a more straightforward birth experience, they're quiet because the people with traumatic birth experiences really are loud and they don't want to dismiss what they are feeling, but people have really beautiful birth experiences too if they're allowed to tell those.
Other voices? Yeah.
What are your thoughts on laughing gas during birth?
Oh, nitrous oxide. I think it's great. I think it's great, and it's used in the UK regularly, and it rapidly reverses in the bloodstream. So it has a very short half-life, and it doesn't affect the baby very much. The baby won't be born under the influence of any of that. So I think it can be very useful. It's less invasive, and I guess that's the way I approach all of birth, and my practice is less invasive to more invasive as medically necessary. And I feel like that can get people over the hump of maybe back labor, more challenging labors, without having to have the epidural, the full-on epidural. So I like it as a possibility. I love hearing your guys' questions. Thank you. You can always just say what resonates with you and what you're confused about too.
I'm adopted and was recently doing a float experience, and I'm curious what you know about maybe re-experiencing birth, just abandonment possibilities, or what might have happened at that time.
Right. I think when we get into those spaces like that theta brainwave space like that, like a floating experience, a sensory deprivation experience, we can allow room for what our body knows and what our memories can unfold. I remember hearing at a conference that I first met Charles at, a woman was talking about her birth experience, and she re-experienced her birth, preconception actually, when she was taking Iboga, and this is in Mexico. She had an experience, and I don't remember why she was taking that for some indicated reason, and she saw her parents, talking about like whether they should conceive or not. I mean, she really just got a view into that experience, and it was very insightful for her, and it's probably, So I would say different altered states like that could support that type of knowing. So I would encourage you to look into that if that calls to you. I think that can be. For sure.
Hi, I appreciated your talk very much. I'm really curious if there's been any discussion about psychedelics and pregnancy, the period leading up to birth, in addition to, obviously, the very powerful episode of birth itself.
Right. Not that I know of. I just don't even know. I haven't done any research on that, and probably should have come prepared for answering that type of question. I just don't know. I've heard I've learned that in some indigenous cultures, like the Shipibo tribe, I think when they're pregnant, they still take a little bit of ayahuasca, during pregnancy, but that's just so cultural for them. But a new book just came out. It's called the Feminine Principles of the Mystique or something. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It's a collection of stories about from women. And I'm eager to read that. I just got that in the mail, and they're recounting some things about psychedelics and birth. So I'm curious to what I'm going to read on that. Wish I could answer.
Hi. I'm thinking about, as I was listening to you, and the parallels between a psychedelic journey and birth. And I've gone to other talks where they've emphasized the need for an intention in a psychedelic journey and preparing for that. And I think about my first birth experience was very long, 52 hours. And I don't think I was ready to give birth. And I think that's in part why that happened. And I'm just wondering if you have seen that before and the correlation between the two.
Right. So fascinating. I still cannot put my finger on it. Why a person has a longer birth than others. I try and think like, and looking back 2020, like on the births that I attend, like, was that karma? Like, why was that so freaking hard every step of the way? Like, when I've seen it just go a lot easier than that. Why her? Why now? Why this? And I haven't, like, at least on this plane, and it's not accessible to me, and I've tried to try and correlate why and all of that. And certainly you not being ready, I mean, that absolutely could slow your labor. That's for sure. And I think the baby not being ready can slow this labor down too. That's part of it. Or having fears, that slows down labor. Like, if you're afraid that your bag of water is going to break, like I had a neighbor, and like this nurse said, as she's pushing in the hospital, she's like, when your bag of water breaks, it's going to be Niagara Falls in here. And my prim and proper neighbor, she was not into that. She's like, F that, I'm not doing that. So she did not push. She stopped, the contraction stopped, and they had to give her cesarean. And it was because she's just something inside, subconsciously, like, I'm not doing that. That's too far for me. So we do have a say in those things, even though it's our subconscious taking the lead sometimes.
Okay, we have a question in the back.
Kind of along those lines, are there things that you work with people preparing for birth on the preparation side to help, whether it's, recommending meditations or, I don't know, holotropic breathing or something to sort of put them into that place ahead of time so they can kind of work through some of this stuff and through their fears and things. I don't know if that's an articulate question, but just what are some of your recommendations?
Yeah. No, I created a program for that. I created a Phoenix Heart Arise program. What made me create that at first was women in pelvic pain and having pain with sex, and really wanting to give them some audio guidance to do a home program because a lot of them are survivors, and I just want to make sure that they can feel comfortable, open, and released, and do some of that work on their own too. But I have a preparation for childbirth class, or not class, it's a program. It's like $150, and you have these different visualizations that help get you in the zone, help you align with your baby, and clear out past births, clear out experiences that no longer serve you so that you can be on your game when it's time to birth. So I absolutely think that is medicine. That's why I did it. I'm glad you asked that. Thank you. And I think hypnobirthing is great too. You know, there are different modalities that are good.
Other voices? Anyone? Well, thank you for. Do you have a question?
It's important.
I wanted to know if you practice in Seattle. I looked you up just now.
Yeah, I do practice in Seattle. That program can be sent anywhere. And yeah, I do want to tell you my email address, and I would love to hear your feedback and what you think maybe was too strong or too controversial. Not that I want to water that down too much, but I would love to hear your feedback, pros and cons, if you're inclined to share that. And my email address is april@aprilbolding.com. Pretty easy. I have some cards up here to remind you on that. And I'm on Facebook. I'm trying to, so thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay, thank you so much, April.
Great.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. If you want to support the Portland Psychedelic Society, we have some T-shirts available here for a $20 donation. Can I have my fellow board members all raise their hands?